Welcome to the Fishbowl Radio, everybody. My name is Chief here, and joining me today is this fabulous crew here at the Fishbowl Radio, Juicy and Jalen. We're going to be talking about Louisiana Tech joining the Sun Belt, and we're also going to be giving a kind of a prognosis, maybe a thing. Maybe we're going to be some doctors, basically, signing out scripts and stuff to go tell you what's going to happen to the college football landscape in the 2030 year when a lot of TV in the 2030s basically when a lot of TV contracts expire because this is what I think a lot of people are talking about the move, but they're not talking about the future of conference realignment too much with it because of the fact that if you look at it here, 2030s, like I mentioned in the intro here, that there's going to be a lot of movement in college football. There's going to be a lot of teams moving around, and this is backing up my theory of a power too. It's been referenced with different quotes and stuff by um, conference commissioners like Greg Sankey has made some comments towards it. And this they're currently having this kind of talk about the playoff format. That's why it's a big deal right now if they're going to get to like they want auto bids in there for an at large and all the conference stuff in the Big Ten. That's who I think is going to be kind of ruling the roost, basically, of college football. Basically, you could divide college football up into tiers right now, technically, even more diverse. There's a Power Four, but I think if you break down conferences and how people, the general public at will, if you will, is how they would view college football if they looked at the conferences with the teams inside there. Like casual fans that don't really pay too much attention. That's the one that is going to be driving this boat here. Mainly because, Jalen and I have worked in broadcast television, so we know how this rating system stuff works. It's not very hard to figure out if you watch something, advertisers are going to pay to put their name there so they can have you go buy their product. Very basic, and that is the main reason why live streaming services cost so much because of live sports. People want to watch live content with sports. That's what draws them, and that's what draws advertisers to those um, channels that advertise live sports like ESPN, ABC, CBS. That's why they got these big deals going on. So that is the money making part of this whole entire thing, which is a real basic thing to let y'all know about that. But anyway, let's start talking about this conference stuff. It's important here. So back to the tier thing I was talking about a little bit earlier. SEC, Big Ten up here at the top. They're the top dog. They're way up here at the top. The tier below it would probably be ACC, Big 12. If you want to break it down even lower than that, you're gonna have start having your G6 conferences. Right now, currently it's the Pac-12. I think the Pac-12 is gonna get blown up. Um, Even more in the future. A little bit more on that later on.
Well,
Sun
they got
Belt's in
all the
this.
schools joining that now, though. Fresno
Yeah,
State, all them.
but it's still on shaky ground though too. Pac-12 and Sun Belt's about like right here, and you could throw the American in that tier as well. One below that one right now would be Conference USA, Mountain West, and the MAC would probably be here way at the bottom of this list here. So that's how I view the conferences. Any idea? Do y'all kind of agree with me with them? How you view them conferences?
Oh, I think you got it spot on, man. I don't think I could have made a better list myself. I mean,
Yeah, Chief, I
Jalen?
definitely agree. I definitely agree, Chief. I mean, excuse me, I know the SEC and Big Ten are always going to be the top dogs, so I completely agree.
So now that we're all on the same page here on a unanimous agreement here at the Fishbowl, here's how I think this stuff's gonna break down. Now, granted, there's a lot of way this could go. I could be very wrong. We might play this back 5 years from now and be like, "Well, Chief, you're an idiot. You did a very bad job of predicting this kind of stuff here." So anyway, let's get down to it here. So, for example, I'm going to use it here because it has been teased in the past before. And usually, when something is teased, there's smoke right there. And where there's smoke, there is fire.
the fire.
So, the fire. So, you look at Clemson and you look at Florida State. It has been well documented that they want to move to the SEC. Now, the SEC is already a huge conference enough as it is, but I don't think they're done expanding. I don't think the Big Ten's done expanding either. At some point, I could even see the ACC and the Big 12 maybe combining conferences to keep up with the money value that the SEC and the Big Ten have. Remember, this is all about money. Money equals power and capitalism. So that's basically what's going on there. So they might combine conferences. That's a crazy idea to think about, but they probably won't have a choice, or one's going to absorb the other one. The one I think that would absorb the other one would be the Big 12 taking down the ACC schools, or whoever's left in the pickings there. I think the ACC is going to get ripped apart whenever their TV deal is done with. I think somebody's going to jump in there and start ripping that stuff apart. The SEC and the Big Ten are probably looking at them like a Thanksgiving Day turkey with a bunch of knives out there, and they're going to start carving that stuff up. So that's what I think is going to happen to the ACC. Now, this is probably a 4 or 5 year prediction on the road, but I can see that happening. And of course, there's going to be chain reaction effects, like exactly what we saw with Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech here is just a remnant of what happened 2 or 3 years ago when Southern Miss, Old Dominion, James Madison, Marshall, and all these schools left Conference USA to go to the Sun Belt. And I would venture not to say I'm very proud of Louisiana Tech for joining the Sun Belt, because now they can finally compete at a higher level conference, and they should have done that years ago to reach a higher level like the Sun Belt Conference. Um, so anyway, if you look at it here, Louisiana Tech joining is just a remnant of that move there. Once those teams left Conference USA, Southern Miss, and all them, it brought them down. Their TV deal, when they renew, it's not going to be that good. They don't have no marquee program left in there, maybe except Western Kentucky, maybe. And that's really like grabbing at straws at this point. Uh, I just don't see it being a big thing here. And now the SEC, I mean, Sun Belt, um, Sun Belt reaching out to Ohio, and they've also reached out to East Carolina to gauging interest in them there as well. So they're building toward the future. They're making these in they're laying down a path later on for when this stuff does start breaking down, because the Sun Belt's always been a reactive conference. They're not gonna be they like to sit back and watch this stuff that's unfold here. So they lost Texas State to the Pac-12. I've mentioned this before, and I told this guys to y'all before as well. I think it's a bad mistake for Texas State going to the Pac-12. I see this as nothing but the Big West Conference back in the early 1990s. In the 1990s, the Big West was sponsoring football. UL would go on the West Coast to play these teams, and it just wasn't a good fit for UL at the point, because a lot of travel costs associated with that here. If the Pac-12 was really going to expand eastward, they should have grabbed another team with Texas State to reduce the travel costs. Now, they don't have that because they only got Texas State. They might do it in the future. You might get some of these maybe Mountain West here, but you got to have a travel partner with them. If that doesn't work out that way, then you're going to be kind of in a bad spot there.
You
So
don't, you don't.
how does all go, Juicy?
I was gonna say you don't think that would expand and like talk about maybe my situation or my what I said like before the show about like conferences absorbing conferences. You don't think like those bigger conferences like the SEC or Pac-12 or Big 12 would try to eat some of the Sun Belt teams or some of the smaller conferences too to try to
It could
keep up with expansion and all that. Like maybe there
it
won't even be a Sun Belt.
it might not be a Sun Belt in the future, but it's all about TV dollars at the end of the day. What brand recognition is going to get you? So I could care less if so with media market ranks and stuff. Tech brings nothing. Okay, they don't bring a TV market with them that the Sunbelt already had. They're in the Monroe TV market, which is like, shoot, Jalen, how high is Monroe? 180, 190 or something like that?
Yeah,
Maybe
it's like
they're
close to
way up
200.
there. There's like I think there's 210 media markets in the United States. They're it's not very good media market number. Lafayette, for reference, is probably, I think, 120, 121. I've seen it as high as 117 since I've been in the industry and stuff. Um, so they're gonna be in that range. I haven't seen them any higher than 117 or 116. I've seen like in like 2014, 2015, they're like 114. It's all about how many TV sets you got in a certain
What
area and
about Baton Rouge? I'm just curious, Baton Rouge for LSU's sake and all
So
that.
Baton Rouge, believe it or not, is just a 90.
Oh wow.
They're like a 90 or 92 or something like that. They're not the biggest media market in Louisiana is New Orleans, and they're just a top
It,
50. They're like
mm,
49, 50, or 53. It's not really that big. Now you'll have some like Shreveport, which Shreveport, Bossier City area, where they'll grab areas in Texas. Media
I'm
markets
sure
are
Lake
not this big.
Charles is pretty small too, though.
Yeah, Lake Charles is like 170 something. A lot of these media markets usually don't have like Lafayette is kind of an outlier, honestly, that we have three TV stations. Lafayette had two TV stations for the longest time. They had news teams, but now News 15 kind of joined. Like they're about to make a decade-year old of having a news organization because, but they're still trying to figure stuff out. You know, like you're that new, you're still trying to figure out how to beat the old heads there. Basically, they're the KATC and the other stations in Lafayette there. So. With that being said, there, because the outlier with those is because Baton Rouge has three, New Orleans has four. So, like Atlanta, like where Georgia State's at, they're in a top 10 media market right there. You'll typically find the bigger media markets on the East Coast, typically speaking. You'll have some outliers like Dallas being five and Houston being a 10, but they're typically out there on the East Coast because that's where the most of the population's at, like Los Angeles, LA's number two, New York is number one. Um, so, but back to what we were talking about conference realignment before we go and start talking about media markets and stuff. So, whenever you start looking at these teams here, so let's put this in the action here. Let's say if SEC gets a wild idea or the Big Ten, I don't know which conference is going to do it. Let's say they go after Clemson and Florida State because that's the two most attractive teams in the ACC right now. Would y'all agree with that?
I would think so.
They
yeah,
could very
I would
well.
agree.
The SEC could very well choose to go pick off the Big 12. I I mean, they could grab Houston. Houston's a top 10 media market, they think, but they have a lot of Texas schools. So the SEC, I wouldn't think would try to go that far. But I mean, we have the ACC doing coast to coast, and I think that was kind of a desperate move by them, I think. Um, somewhat. They're just trying to grab somebody there. But the Big Ten and the SEC have a lot of like inroads in the ACC as it is anyway. With states and travel with travel partners there, South Carolina, Clemson, and the SEC, that would be a very, very good rivalry to bring into the SEC. Florida State and Florida, very good rivalry. That's why I think they're going to end up in the SEC
Mhm.
here. So, how much are these values are going to be worth here if the ACC? How much is their contract going to be knocked down when they try to reapply for it if this happens before 2030? I think we're at a specific point in time here where where it's 2025 right now. Say 2030, all this stuff goes down. You got a 5 year gap. There's going to be some more conference realignment. I guarantee that much. Because everybody's trying to find their perfect spot here, and with the amount of teams coming in the FBS, that's why they had to raise the limit to move up from FCS to FBS because it was too low and they were letting too many teams in FBS. That's why I think there's gonna be a power to. At some point, they're gonna break up to another tier. I think there's gonna be two. I think there's gonna be 50 or 60 teams at that top level. Because if you look back the last 30 some years, I think the amount of teams that won national championships is like maybe 12 or 15, Juicy.
Something like that, though.
It's not. I don't think it's over 20. I don't think it's over 20 teams. So why are we having this many teams in the FBS anyway? I think that's the question that is being asked. I mean, rightfully so. Like, why are these teams not competing for national championships that are in this conference itself? It's not a bad thing. I'm not bashing any team that hasn't won a national championship, but I think the powers that be, like the casual fans, they're not going to watch. Aside from like we like the Cajuns have to be ranked, and the last time we were ranked was 21 and 20. But before that, yeah, you all know the answer to that question.
Yep.
So yeah, so they're only going to watch ranked opponents. They're not going to go venture out. Just like to venture out and say this. Let's just think about this for a second. I've seen a lot of people on. There was a lot of discussion going on, like, oh, Coastal's good for the conference. This is gonna get back to. I mean, years ago, I said that you shouldn't cheer for your conference mates, especially in this era in college athletics. Maybe 20 years ago, that was a good idea. Maybe 10, even 10 years ago. I would say even 5 years ago was a good idea to cheer for it. I don't know so much anymore about that because you got the transfer portal and all this other stuff going on. And in addition to that, here, I think Coastal's going to leave the Sun Belt. I think James Madison might even leave the Sun Belt. There was already some fans when Louisiana Tech got in there, were already talking about leaving the Sun Belt because of adding Louisiana Tech. They were like they called themselves the Big Four or whatever, and everybody's like, "Man, you just got in here 3 years ago or whatever." So there might be some truth there, maybe with it. Maybe they're thinking like, "Hey, the Sun Belt's just a nice temporary spot for us. We're gonna go." If the ACC, I guarantee you, if the ACC says, "Hey, Colts, you want to come join the conference?" They're not going to turn it down.
Absolutely not. I
Yeah,
I
agree.
they're
think
not going to
Coastal
turn it.
would be a good fit, especially more so in baseball. They would definitely be a good fit.
And the Coastals have success. Coastal's been kind of a hot button like team to add. Liberty's got some baggage with them with their private label and like just the money that Liberty has. I could see them going to the ACC as well. I think they're in a good spot, honestly. Like when all this stuff starts going down, y'all watch. That's gonna be something to kind of watch out for here because if you're in the headlines and your name is in there, like Marshall's kind of got a brand to them. App State does too, but the problem with App State and some of these schools, they don't have a big media market to kind of
Hey,
play off of, if you will.
I was just thinking, talking about the ACC and SEC pulling some of those. What's the chances do you think that Georgia Tech would be back in the SEC again too? Now?
Hmm. That's a very good question. You have a natural rival there with Georgia, but like I said, like the SEC has a lot of inroads. I'm thinking Greg Sankey wants a bigger playoff because he wants more teams, and that means more money. That's all it is to it at the end of the day. And the reason why he's pushing it so far, so hard right now to get these at-large bids, because he knows that the SEC has done a very good job within the last decade of making these roles with these broadcast companies like ESPN. ESPN has their own SEC network channel. ESPN is in their best interest to promote the SEC because they have a lot of money funding the SEC itself there. Like ABC, like CBS, they were able to steal SEC of CBS and put them on ABC. That's why the CBS went with the Big Ten. The Big Ten saw well the SEC on CBS has done. They're like, hey, we want a piece of that pie too, which I don't blame them either. They got a very good media deal out of it. Um, and and a lot of them's like, and a lot of people are going to be like, how can, like, this is going to be a conversation we're going to have 3 or 4 years from now. And there are a lot of people going to come out from these G5 schools and they're going to say this, how can we stop this? These people here have ruined college football completely because they have all the money, they control every single thing, and we can't do anything else. We're just kind of sitting there like, why should we support them? And it's everybody's fault. Every person, everybody on this podcast is their fault too. It's everybody that has turned on a game and watched ranked opponents play against each other from a Power Four conference. It's everybody's fault. The only way you stop Greg Sankey, the SEC, the Big Ten is if you turn off that channel and you watch something else. That's the only way to do it
Well,
because that's exactly what would have to happen. And I would bet everything I own that the majority of Americans are not going to do that. What y'all
I
think,
don't.
fellas? You don't all speak up at one time now.
Figuring out who's going to try to talk next.
All right,
No,
Jalen, you go ahead.
I was about to say, just you can go ahead, but I think the landscape is, excuse me, definitely gonna be different. I mean, like Greg Sankey said, hey, do we want to change the format of the college football playoff? You got to think about that too. When you look at these schools, think about expanding, think about leaving a big conference going to a small one. I mean, I want to know something. If Florida State beats Alabama week one, do they deserve to move to the SEC? I mean, I know no is the answer, but at the same time, this Alabama we're talking about. So it's just a lot of key things you have to think about when it comes to these teams. And I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen this season, leading up to 2026, leading up to, like you said, Chief 2030, and see what's going to happen.
Well, I'm on board with y'all. I just think that, I mean, if they beat Alabama, I don't think it means anything per se because, I mean, I think they still have to what? I don't know how that works. I think you have to like you have a contract that have like with the conference or something. I don't know how that works, or if you can just leave
You're
and
talking about
join.
TV. You're talking about TV deals,
No,
Juicy?
I'm talking about just like in general. I thought like
Oh
I don't
yeah,
know
they got
how
the
that.
Bill of Rights stuff that they like the ACC one's kind of been a famous one that they're doing that for that there, but they all expire at some point. I think the ACC's up is in 2031, 2032. Don't quote me on actual years, but that's the ticker. Like, and they have a huge, massive like buyout clause whenever you do this stuff here. But these like Florida State's already been saving. They've been saying they've got the money saved up to go drop it, or they're building up to save up money to go do this here. I guess they're waiting for whenever the moment is correct and it's right or whatever. And I think that's part of it there.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I guess nothing's like it used to be. Just all the Big East and all these little conferences with themselves. Life was so much simpler back then.
So what I wish they would, man, it's like, do you add more tiers to it? I think there's gonna be there might even be three more tiers they add
More
to it.
tiers do
And
mean more money,
that's been an
though.
article that they put out there already before. I think Yahoo Sports put something out about it that they were talking about tiers to this college football, which kind of tipped me off a little bit. And I started looking at comments of other commissioners about what they've been saying about the college football playoff and stuff. And I was like, wait a second, all this stuff kind of makes sense somewhat because it's um like whoever has the bag of money controls everything. And right now it's the SEC that has the most money out of all the conferences in terms of TV contract. And all these schools are getting like LSU, they're benefiting from it here. Um, and the Big Ten is not that far behind them. So how big are these conferences going to get? Can the Big 12 and the ACC combine to get? I think that's their best chance of surviving. And I don't know what they would call themselves, the Great American Conference, I guess. I don't know.
I'd say
Um, they could
more
very well
tiers.
merge.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Juicy. I want to hear what you guys say.
I was gonna say more tiers is gonna happen because more tiers means more games and more money, which kind of like in how they did in college baseball when it was just regionals and then it was Omaha. Well, they added the super regionals because that was more games and of course that was more money. So yeah, I mean it's gonna happen eventually because
Yeah, so
this baseball's a good.
What you thinking, Jalen?
Yeah, that's a good point that Juicy made. I mean, the more games they have, the more money that's going to be in people's pockets. And I think, Chief, like you said, when it comes to the small, not even the smaller schools, like the ACC, they look at the Big 12. Yes, they're not as big as the Big 10. They're definitely not as big as the SEC. But for them to come together and create their own league, they'll be able to compete with the SEC and Big 10. I can see that happening.
Yeah, I think that's something that you have to think about. Like they're not going to get the contracts that they need. Granted, that's going to be a huge conference regardless, but I mean, this is going to be after the ACC loses some schools to the SEC or the Big Ten. The ACC might actually cease to exist. It's a
And
possibility.
I could see more schools going to the SEC than the Big 10, honestly, because I mean, I didn't know the SEC was going to get Texas and Oklahoma recently, and then look how well they're doing in the SEC.
So I want to bring up Texas and Oklahoma for a second here because I want y'all to remember this, and I know that y'all saw this. There was a time in college football about a decade ago, the Pac-12 was interested in adding Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah, wonder why that fell through. I can't remember why.
I don't remember why. I think maybe it's like the TV contract or something at the time because nobody wants to watch the late night. There's not as many people watching the late night games to begin with anyway. That's why the media deal was so kind of weak, basically, because who's up watching at 9 o'clock at night for the Pac-12 game of the week?
Yeah, that's the only harsh thing about playing in the Pac-12 is half the country's already going to sleep or in bed by the time you're playing.
So
And
true.
that's why I think the shift like eastbound like might be the move there. For a lot. That's why you see Stanford going across the country to go play ACC games. That's why you see like all these other like it don't make no sense that they're doing that, but here we are. They're chasing TV dollars is what's going on. Everybody's chasing TV dollars. That's why Louisiana Tech is in the Sun Belt now. They're chasing TV dollars, even though they adamantly were trying to separate themselves from the Sun Belt in any way, shape, or form, even denouncing the Sun Belt a couple years ago in a very famous viral video of the now athletic director of Rice. Um, and it's been kind of a meme going on basically with all the Sun Belt teams and schools and fan bases and stuff. They've been posting he's never going to live that down. They're making sure they're never going to live it down, which I don't blame it. It's kind of bad to talk bad about somebody anyway, and then to have it blow up in your face is kind of like just desserts there. But he's not even there anymore. So he's at Rice, which they end up going to Our Lady of Lords Stadium to open up the season. So that's something to talk
That's
about there. Yep. So anyway, um, going back to this realignment thing, if they do make these jumps here, they're gonna backfill. Where are they gonna pull from? If the ACC gets rated really bad, depending how bad they are, if they manage to survive it, they have to backfill, which is gonna be you got the American right there, and you got the Sun Belt. Now, the question that boggles into my mind is how much is this? How much can how much is the American Conference going to get on a new TV contract once the dust is settled, or the Sun Belt, even when the dust is settled here? You like who is the ACC going to take here? Does Coastal go up to the American, or does the American take that there? That's why I think when the Sun Belt deal needs to be renegotiated because they add a lot. Because a lot of when they renegotiate the deal for the Sun Belt, they didn't have a good bit of these schools in here. So it's time to renegotiate a contract for
The
sure.
ACC might try to get Notre Dame as one of their expansions if they manage to stay afloat. I mean, Notre Dame's already part of their conference in basketball and baseball, I think.
Well, they do have a relationship there. They would benefit a lot from Notre Dame, ACC, honestly. That could keep them alive, basically, especially if they get them. Especially if like Clemson and Florida State go to the SEC or I'm trying to think of who else. Maybe Boston College going to the Big Ten, Virginia
You got to look
Tech,
at teams like yeah, like
Virginia,
Miami.
Miami's right there too.
The
Miami can go
Big
to the
Ten already
SEC.
took the Big Ten already took Maryland from them, and Maryland from the ACC all them years ago.
Yeah. And you don't really hear much about Maryland. I feel like that deal, I mean, they're getting a bigger piece of the pie here, but um, they're gonna probably grab some more. Maybe
No,
like
I think the ACC would try to grab like the Big 12 take some, and I think that the ACC would try to look at like maybe taking like West Virginia or
I
something
can see
like
that.
that.
I could definitely see that.
you gotta stop the bleeding somehow. You got the SEC might even go after North Carolina, Duke.
Well,
They could
geographically, it
grab
would all
probably.
still make sense.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I
look
mean,
look look how look how basketball would be if Duke was in the SEC.
Oh man,
Duke
I
and North
know.
Carolina. Could you imagine grabbing those two?
And then they got
What I'm
Auburn,
saying, yeah, I'm just saying,
Alabama.
like who's gonna be? How does it? How the ACC is gonna have the backfield? Like they look like they're looking like the Pac-12 at this point.
West Virginia, they might try to poach Notre Dame football, Maryland, try to some teams like
Shoot,
that to
the
try to
Big
stay
Ten might
afloat.
even go grab Kansas.
Yep.
If we're gonna, it depends on what their priority is. Because Big
Kansas
Ten
and
got,
Kansas State, maybe.
yeah, I don't think they would grab Oklahoma State. I don't. Now Texas Tech, they've been throwing around some NIL money, so I think they're gonna be in one of those
I
Power
would
Two
be willing to
conferences.
bet the SEC. The SEC would have a better chance at Oklahoma State, probably.
Texas Tech. It just depends on which way what their strategy is going to what team we want. Now they're not going to get rid of Vanderbilt because of academic things here.
No, and they're pretty relevant baseball
Like
for
what's the
just for
top
that too.
like what is the top limit of teams y'all think will be in this new Power Two? I think that's the most important question we need to ask here.
I think, man, I think it's possible. Like in the conferences you're talking about.
I'm not talking about the comp. I'm talking about total. Like once that tier is set, let's say they're in the like they're done expanding. There's no more expansion. It's done with. How many teams do you think's gonna be in that top tier once they start breaking everything up?
I would say 50 to 70 or so.
I had my head in 60 for whatever reason. What you think, Jalen?
That's a lot of teams. I think it's going to be between 40 and 50. But regardless, it's still going to be a lot of teams, but that's how it's going to have to be.
So so for everybody else that's in the FBS, dude, they're gonna get their own playoff. I think the G5 is gonna have their own playoff. They teased that in the mid 2000s. I've seen it come up a couple of years ago in 2018, 2019-ish. So that idea is not dead. They're just gonna make sure that you have one. So they're gonna be the new FCS here, which I don't think is gonna be a bad thing for them. I do think it can give more brand recognition to a school. Look at North Dakota State. Look at like James Madison had good brand recognition or whatever. You're hearing more of these FCS teams like Eastern Kentucky has that red field. You got to do something to kind of brand yourself. So that's part of it there too. That's what I think. You don't think a G5 playoff is going to happen?
I
Yeah,
think so.
I think so.
I just don't know how long it's gonna last.
Or how many teams? Like, is the
I mean,
ACC or whatever's left of the ACC in the Big 12? Do they go to that G5? Are they in that playoff?
I say
In
yes.
addition,
Because, I mean, I say yes.
I kind of
Because
got
I
that
think they'll
idea
move
too.
them. Because then they would have every right to move up.
And I mean, yeah, like you position yourself there. Um, because it's NIL has kind of made this to be like a semi-pro league, and
Yep. Hmm.
now players are getting percentage of the pot that these athletic departments are getting. A certain percentage for I think every school or whatever it is. and that's gonna push a further divide because, like for example, just for local reasons, LSU players are gonna get a higher percentage of the pie than UL players because LSU just makes more money than UL does in athletics. I mean, you could just look at the size of the stadium, and that tells you the answer right there of like just a football stadium.
They just make more money in general and revenue in general.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to compete against something like that, you know. There are certain sports where it doesn't really matter with money. You can get real hot and time and you can get beat like baseball and stuff, but um that's part of it. So I think, like I said, everything we talked about here could be completely off or not or whatever, but there's a lot of ways that we could think about this thing going away here. Lamount West got hurt real bad in this last round of conference realignment. Um, the Pac-12, even before that there. So we're everybody's finding their tier and they're gonna be there for a couple of years. But I think within the next 5 years, I think the 2030s are gonna be one that where we're gonna have these tiers established and these teams are gonna everybody's trying to get in the right position they think they should find themselves at. So I think we've had a good discussion here today, guys. Um, anything you want to say before we get off here?
I think I'm good.
I would say I'm looking forward to expansion. I want to see more teams, more football.
Yep. Especially with like the new playoff kind of stuff, you're going to see that kind of
Agree,
thing
yeah.
happen. So thank y'all for tuning in here to this episode here at the Fishbowl Sports Radio. We hope you have a great and wonderful night, and we're going to see y'all here next time here on the Fishbowl Radio. Like our Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok pages here. We're constantly posting videos.
Should be in the next
And
few weeks. We doing the football previews and stuff, huh?
yeah, we're gonna a couple of weeks from now we're gonna be doing our season previews for LSU and the Louisiana Raging Cajun football team. So football season's almost here. We've been kind of doing a hiatus a little bit here, just a kind of a little bit of update here, just kind of fill in the Louisiana Tech thing and just think of the bigger picture. There's a lot more going on than what just Louisiana Tech going to the Sun Belt. So that's what we're here to do to kind of remove the shroud over your head, basically, of what's going on with conference realignment. So thank you for tuning in here. We hope you have a great, wonderful day. We'll see you here next time here on the Fishbowl Sports Radio. Have a good night, Fishbowl Nation.